situation, we are constantly reviewing and editing and doing, follow-up meetings with all of the players involved to make sure that our plans reflect what we learn each time something comes about.
Yeah, did you ever get the antenna built that was meant to remove the dead spots from communication?
Yeah, that's part of the ongoing, and I'll be quite frank with this group, the holdup is material. Everybody's backordered. We just got an ammunition shipment that came to Europe in 2020.
We will be happy to know that one of the questions that's asked during the Homeland Security assessment is the radios of the police and fire working in all three of our schools in the year. Okay. The police and fire had no issues with dead spots in our school. Both the police and fire, when on off days of vacation, use our schools with training in, obviously. We allow this so that they're familiar with the layout of our school. There was some kind of incident happened, police and fire know where to go. All of the windows are numbered in our school. So classrooms, so they say room 216 at All-Smith School. Okay, the fire and police are gonna know what room that is. Okay, we're working with 911 so that if a call comes from the classroom through 911, they'll be able to identify what classroom to call paper. Narrowing things down. Okay, as those who live in the city know, there are other places we've been talking about. I know Chief Moss and I talked about the rec center, right down on Memorial Street. Okay. Paul and I talked about just shut parking lot if we had to, or DK Motel parking lot if we had to. There are alternative plans that we have discussed in the past here that we would make sure that your kids got to some safe location. There is enough room if we had said middle school and high school both up to the community center. We would do it. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
Parent of a first and fourth grader, and I also have the opportunity to be a substitute teacher at Paul Smith, so I know some of the little ones. I guess as a concern in the sense of this whole mental health situation, I feel like kids who hurt kids are kids that are hurting themselves. And I wonder if there's a little bit more that we could do mental health-wise. There's awesome response behavior-wise at the school that I've seen. They do awesome things to keep the kids safe when they're going through a behavior kind of thing. It takes 1 second for a kid who's really upset to do an action that hurts another child and affects that child forever. So my concern is, as a parent, is there more we could do to be to help the kids who are going through something? Because even today, I was in a classroom with a little kid who was like, I don't have anywhere to live next week. And then it just hurts my heart, and that child's then hurting another child saying things,
Sure. So, I think realistically, I think from what I see, right, as an outside agency looking into what the schools are doing, is that guidance counselors, social workers that are in our schools are working really hard to work on coping skills, right? They're coming home, even in a different district, my own kids are coming home and they're teaching me about zones of regulation, and they're teaching me about, grounding and mindfulness. And so I think there's a lot of learning about that, right? There's a lot of putting that out there for students to know how to navigate big emotions, right? Especially little kids, right? They're big emotions that they don't understand. So I think there's a lot being done in that regard. Barb, if you could speak more to that as to what's happening in the schools.
I think that's when I mentioned the multi-tiered systems of support, really what that is a public health approach that says, everybody gets some education about, and I'll use the elementary school as an example because you just did. All elementary school kids right now are using a curriculum. All the teachers are been trained in the Fly 5 curriculum, which basically teaches about emotions and how to be a good friend and how you interact with things that you need to know when you're coming together. Especially right now, when you think about the kids who in March of 2020, myself, I have a child who started kindergarten in the fall of 2020. So I look at my child, and he had a lot of socialization and a lot of stuff, and his poor mom's a social worker, or, yeah, he's the poor kid. His mom's a social worker. So he gets a lot of that at home. But what we're seeing, especially at the elementary school level, is a lot of kids who haven't gotten what many of them would have gotten in structured settings, in preschools, and other social settings. So at the elementary school, again, I'll use that as an example, every classroom teacher is doing lessons which are at the grade level that they're at, but it's all within the same Fly 5 curriculum. It's like maybe 20 minutes twice a week, so it's not a whole day, but they're weaving that throughout their teaching as well. So that's the tier 1. The tier 2 is, at the same time, they're setting clear expectations. You know, here's how we're going to teach you how to be a good friend. We're going to teach you how to communicate without slapping your friend in the face. You know, we're going to teach you how to communicate without touching other people. So we're teaching everybody that. And then we'll have some kids who maybe don't get it. Maybe they need to be retaught. And maybe then the counselor's able to pull them aside and they do a group. They do a social skills group at lunch. They have a bunch of kids who have trouble getting along with other kids who can sit down with a counselor, and might be 3 or 4 kids over lunch, which is kind of an unstructured Wild West time anyway. So it's a great time for the counselor to say, okay, now we're going to say please and thank you. You're not going to grab his food, you know. So that would be tier 2. Tier 3 would be, kid is still struggling. We're going to be talking to that family and saying, you know, what else is going on? We want to know what else is going on. What support does the family need? What support does the kid need? Are there mental health issues? Is it a lack of you know, a kindergartner coming in, he's never been around other kids? What's going on? And in some cases, we're making a referral for mental health counseling if there's sort of an underlying issue that's kind of driving that. So when we talk about multi-tiered systems of support, that's what it looks like at the elementary school. And that's why it's important that we have the excellent relationships with our community partners, with Health First and with Riverbend. They're also coming into the schools. So they can do some of those groups, or they can do, I don't know what that noise is. Speak louder. They can do some of those groups, or they can do individual counseling with the kids, or work with the families, or whatever's needed. So we try and kind of structure it that way. Because for some kids, it just needs to be, you know, you haven't been taught how to act in certain situations. And for some, it's you need more practice, and for some, it's you might need some counseling support.
Barb, I want to add on really quick. We've just really started this work recently. Over the summer, we did a training of about 40 staff members, and recently we did a training of another 18 staff members. We're trying to get as much of it in. We're following a system called MANT. MANT focuses on building healthy relationships, building healthy communication, and building healthy conflict management. And that all starts with helping teachers and staff members be able to intervene in situations. So not only are we trying to be proactive, but intervene in situations that are to de-escalate a situation and to not continue to escalate that situation. And a lot of that training has been coming, and we're working really hard on that.
The other thing I wanted to mention is that we do provide a lot of training for our staff. And if you've been subbing in the district, connect with me. I can get you connected with some training too, on things like how to work with kids who might have experienced trauma, or might have had many moves, or things going on that are disruptive to their lives, that they're, as Ashley was saying, you know, that are causing these big feelings. It's important that teachers and all staff really have an ability to wrap their heads around, you know, what the kid is bringing to the classroom, what the student is bringing to the situation.
Any other questions? Barbara, yes,
Yeah, I wanted to ask if all of the teachers have received a certain level of training in how to cope with all of these scenarios, and also they can't be all trained psychologists, but are they at least getting some modest training in how to recognize certain problem areas or even mental health areas that could become disruptive or even dangerous?
Me again. When we had Project Aware, which was a large SAMHSA grant that came through the New Hampshire Department of Education. It was from 2015 to 2019, I believe. So during that 4-year time period, all of our staff was trained in youth mental health first aid, which was an 8-hour course, recognizing the signs and symptoms. It was mostly focused on adolescents, so 12 to 18-year-olds. But how to know what's normal development for youth and how to know what's problematic. So when you should be concerned about somebody's mental health maybe deteriorating, having a mental health issue or a mental health crisis that could lead to some behavioral issues. So during that time frame, all the staff was trained. We've continued to offer that, and of course we've had some turnover in staff, so not everybody has had that training. This past year for Summer Institute, which we do for 2 weeks in August for staff, they generally get paid to come and get their professional development hours. An entire week this year was about working with students with trauma. There was one day was youth mental health first aid, one day was the MANT training. We had our partners from Riverbend came in and did a half-a-day session on recognizing trauma and its impact on learning in the classroom, especially with the younger kids. So we had a whole week of professional development on that. And every year, per state law, now we are required to provide at least 2 hours of suicide prevention training to all staff in the district. We did that this year on October 4th. So one of our professional development days, everyone was in the high school gym, and we had someone from an organization called Connors Climb come and do that. So everyone got a basic level of mental health awareness, when to be concerned, looking for signs and symptoms specifically related to suicidality. However, a lot of the signs and symptoms are the same as concern for other mental health crises.
School safety wise, all teachers and staff members have been trained on the most updated aid response protocols.
Are there any pop quizzes about that?
What's that?
Any
Pop
pop
quizzes?
quizzes?
No, I would encourage them to use the resource. I'll even tell them what color it is if we're practicing, or if we are in some sort of a situation where we're clear hallways. We've had situations where a student or a staff member have had an issue in the hallway, and we'll say, oh, clear hallways, please check the blue, the dark blue line on your box for the responses. And a majority of our staff, and this doesn't account for new staff that we've had in the past year, but a majority of our staff have been trained in ICS 100, which is Homeland Security. And that course talks about incident command and emergency situations and how to respond to the staff member in any kind of global emergency.
The other thing that all of our staff have been trained in, and we do this pretty much yearly, is not only the aid response protocol, but we then train the kids, because it's the kids that we need to train. And by using the aid assistant response protocols, the kids have the same responses when they go from elementary to middle to high school, so we build that consistency. The only other thing I wanted to mention, I should have mentioned it earlier, we're required by law now to do an active shooter drill each year. That's a new state law that just came into effect. So I don't know if what happened at the high school, consequently in the middle school and elementary school, classify as that. I think maybe that it would. But it's possible that we might, and we would notify parents that we're in this, but it's possible that we might do an active shooter drill later on this spring. But we'd certainly notify parents in the community to be aware that we're going to do something like that. So I want to put that on. That's a new state law that just went into effect. Any other questions? Wow, we did good, huh? I'm not going to use this, you guys should be able to get me fairly loud. I want to thank you on behalf of the Franklin School Board, the Franklin School District for coming out tonight for this. Hopefully that answers some of your questions when it deals with our safety and school safety. For all parents, please, if you want to come look at our schools and look at the safety steps that we've taken, reach out to Superintendent Legallo, call the SAU, send him an email, come in and look at our schools, look at the safety things that have gone in place. We'll bring you down to the Office of School Wellness back and go over show you some of the stuff in there that goes on. Okay, but this is your school. You as parents, this is your school. We run the school and make sure you can say, but this is your school. If you have questions, ask them. If you're not sure about something or you want to see what we've done, we completely open. Any time you want, just set up the time with Superintendent Gallo, we can set that up. If you have a police or fire question, I know that both Chief Foss and Chief Goldstein have open door policies when it comes to the citizens in Franklin. Do not hesitate to stop the local police and fire department and call them up and leave a message. They'll get the answer for you if they don't have it right off. They'll get it for you. Okay, or if you ask them a question, they'll say, well, let me talk to the school. I guarantee you they will reach out to the school and we will get an answer from you. Okay? But I urge all of you to get the school app website, get on there, download it. Please make sure your information is updated through Alma. That is extremely important. We're reaching out to parents, okay? If you change addresses, you change phone numbers, you change emails,
You can call the school, call your school secretaries, send an email. I can't iterate all the correct phone numbers. Like, that is so important. That's the way all of us know how to communicate with
Don't hesitate if you know a school board member. We're not going to give you the answers because that's not our job. Okay? Our job is to make decisions when it comes to school policies, everything. I'm not going to give you that today. But if you're not sure, you can't get a hold of somebody, and you reach out to me in an email or an instant message, say, hey, Tim, what's going on with this, that, or that? I promise you that email or that instant message you send me, that's going to be going to the superintendent. I guarantee you this. If you don't believe me, ask me. Okay? And we'll get the answers for you. So, if you reach out to your school board members, like I said, they're not going to answer the question and tell you what's going on. That's not their responsibility. But I will tell you that the school board member will say, hey, we'll look into that. I'll send a message to the superintendent. Okay, superintendent, as you all know, works for the school board. He's the only person in the district that does. Okay, so he'll get the answers for you, trust me. Karen?
Just for that, I think it might be good to clarify again, this mentioned your active shooter drill. I want to make sure, I'm sure, that it's not the kind of active shooter drill that should be traumatic. There's some that might be thinking that, so.
And we're going to be very clear that it is a drill. We're not in the business of scaring children.
That might drill.
No, it would be age appropriate as well. It would look very different in the preschools. And like I said, I'm pretty sure what happened already probably qualifies us. I think they've been through enough this year, for sure. So, but I did want to mention that to you because it is something that looks like we have to do every year now. So.
Is that like a fire drill where people go different places?
They don't define the specifics around it. They leave that to local control, thankfully. But for us, it would be certainly a lockdown at all three schools would qualify, and then we would be based on the ages of the kids. We would be talking about what Nicole talked about, which would be the run, plan, fight, which is kind of the new active shooter response piece. So if you've been running it out of the building, you're running it out of the building in a real situation. Now, we're not going to practice that, but we might talk to the older kids about that. In a real situation, this is what we would do.
We're required to run 10 emergency drills, not 10 fire drills, but 6 of them must be fire drills. But we're required to run 10 emergency drills. Typically, we end up with more than that because of some situations that occur, like a clear hallways is something that we consider practicing an emergency type situation. But all of those are written up, documented, shared with police, fire, and debriefed based on whatever action items we discover or need to amend or cheer for done well. So 10 of those at minimum are done in all 3 schools.
You put us in an auditorium and give us presentations and talk to us. I tell you, by the end of that, my hackles are up. I'm ready to go. It's just, and I don't know what kind of training you're talking about when you start saying kids are going to have active shooter training, because that can be pretty scary. And
We've done it here.
yeah,
And we're very aware of the potential for secondary trauma. staff as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a surprise. It didn't surprise anybody. Walking the halls and stuff like that. So suffice it to say, we're very aware of the potential for children, especially children who have to be traumatized by that kind of exercise. And it's something that we've argued about over the last few years. We did it pre-COVID and it worked well. We identified some problems with the exercise. So it's not new to us. There are some commercial type of exercise, I think it's called a FASTER program. It teaches teachers how to react in certain situations and harm themselves, et cetera. That's a lot of the discussions in the market right now is around teachers and around security and stuff like that. So it's not, I take this point very, very seriously because we're very aware of all these potential. And we don't want to hurt anybody.
And you don't want to get high school students wound up to the point.
Sure. Absolutely.
Any other questions? All right, again, thank you very much for coming out this evening. Thank you to our speakers that has come out this evening to discuss all this with you. Please travel home safely, and again, if you have any questions, concerns, or want to visit our schools, please reach out to Superintendent McGowan.